shop was 85 years old. I started singing that.
It is a special year. It is a special pleasure every year to welcome Rav Schachter to Yeshiva Lev HaTorah. It is not something we take for granted. We thank Yeshiva University and we thank Rav Schachter for coming to spend time with us here in the yeshiva, like every year. For those who know Rav Schachter, he really needs no introduction. For those who are Shana Aleph, who maybe it's the first time hearing Rav Schachter, so understand that in the presence of who we're sitting and standing, a real true Gadol B'Torah, one of the leading poskim in America. He has probably more Rabbanim calling him on a consistent basis than any other Rav, asking Shailas, Rabbanim of communities, to paskin and to give him guidance. There are Talmidei Chachamim who are Talmidei Chachamim of the mind. There are great leaders of Am Yisrael who are men of action. There are very few people who are not just Talmidei Chachamim of the mind, but they also have, excuse the pun, a Lev HaTorah, but someone who they live the Torah, they're passionate in every single fiber of them. Their mind and their hearts are one in terms of the service of Klal Yisrael, the leadership that Rav Schachter shows for all of Klal Yisrael is something that is singular in our generation. Somebody that breathes and feels the pain of Klal Yisrael wherever they are, and is a true leader. During Corona, there were countless questions in Svarim, and Shelit'a coming out in Rav Schachter's name, and here in the war, likely as well, many questions that are coming out connected to the war. So we have a great split of someone who is anchored in the Beis Medrash, someone who is kol kulo Torah, knows the breadth and the depth of Torah knowledge. At the same time, he's a person who leads by example. He goes out actively to all over the world to really show the leadership of Klal Yisrael. The way we're going to work it today is Rav Schachter will be answering questions that you guys have submitted to Rav Siv. Rav Siv will ask the question and Rav Schachter will answer. Thank you very much.
I will answer if I know the answer. I didn't sign a contract. I don't know.
Okay, the first question, does drafting into the army increase the chances of death, or is it all God's plan? If someone dies in war, does that mean they would have died at the same time had they not been involved in the war?
I don't think so. We believe in Hashgacha, but if you go into a dangerous location, there's a higher chance that you're going to get killed. I don't think we're not so fatalistic. I don't think so.
Okay, in light of ongoing, what's been going on, there are calls in various communities for people specifically to hire Jewish labor as opposed to non-Jewish labor or Arab labor. What is Rebbe's view on this from a halachic perspective and a hashkafic perspective as well?
It was reported right after Shmini Atzeres that the Palestinian terrorists were given all the information from the Arab workers that they had. They told them where the shulas and where this one, where the entrance. They told them all the entrances and all the exits. So it's mamish dangerous if you have Arab workers. They can go give all the information to these terrorists, and they'll know how to kill everybody. Years ago, before Hakamas HaMedina, in the early years, when they were preparing to make a Medina, so they had kibbutzim, and they were milking the cows, and Shabbos about milking the cows on Shabbos. Reb Chaim Oizer and the Chazon Ish both said the best recommendation is they should have goyim to milk the cows on Shabbos rather than look for a heter. So at that time, the secular Jews said, we want to found a Medina. You can't found a Medina based on the assumption you're going to have non-Jews work for you. That's what we call avodah zarah. Non-Jews working, that's avodah zarah. Not exactly avodah zarah, but they were right. You should never really rely on. They shouldn't have found a Medina based on the assumption you're going to have Nachum do everything. You have to have everything should be done by Jews. The problem is that the Jews would never agree to work for so low a salary, so we should give them a higher salary. There was a whole cause célèbre. Jews picketed a certain factory where the Jewish owner of the factory hired non-Jewish Arab laborers in the factory. And the Jews picketed the factory and they wouldn't let the trucks deliver the stuff. They were slashing tires and they were breaking windows. It was a whole issue. The Chazon Ish already lived in Eretz Yisrael, and I think Rabbi Elchanan read about it in the newspapers. He wrote a whole bit of letter, a whole nasty letter. How can they do that? That's against the halacha. So the Chazon Ish sent them a letter. My dear friend, we live in Eretz Yisrael. We know what's happening. They know what they're doing. Yekayf al tzedakah. The owner of the factory should have hired Jewish workers in order to give them a parnasa. They deserve what they got, and it's permissible. Sometimes it's permissible to have a boycott and to slash tires and to break windows and so on. The Chazon Ish sent this nasty letter, and he said, let the Rabbanon in Eretz Yisrael pass the Mishnah. So this also. We'll have to have Jewish workers, even though it's going to cost a little more, so it'll cost a little more. It's not right to have not Jewish workers. The Gemara hasn't been like that. If you have a choice of selling to a Jew or non-Jew, sell to a Jew. You have a choice of purchasing from a Jewish grocery store or non-Jewish grocery store. You buy from the Jewish grocery store. Even if it means it'll cost you a little bit more. The post will say, even if it'll cost a little bit more. If it's going to add up to several $1,000s a year, instead of buying at the A&P, my wife is going to buy at the local grocery store, it's going to cost several $1,000s more. So it depends how wealthy you are. So by some people, $7,000 is like a nickel. So they should give the business to the Jewish grocery store. By me, several $1,000s is not like a nickel. That's a lot of money. So then I'll buy by the A&P. I won't buy by the Jewish grocery store. But if it's not that unreasonable, then there's a mitzvah to do all of your business, to hire Jewish workers and to have Jewish moichrem and Jewish koyim and so on. She give the business to Jewish people. The famous Jewish HaRav. Ramah had a cousin who was a Rav in Italy. So he published a new edition of the Rambam. And he was selling a lot of copies. So a Goyish publisher saw that if you sell Rambams, make a lot of money. So he printed another edition of the Rambam, and he was selling it for less than Ramah's cousin. So the Ramah wrote a whole shudder with a whole bunch of reasons why no one's allowed to buy from the Goyish edition of the Rambam, have to buy from his cousin. That was one of the reasons, even though his cousin was charging a little more, but that's the halacha. Whenever you can either buy from a Jew or from a Goy, you're supposed to buy from the Jew, even if it costs you a little bit more. And a whole bunch of other reasons also. That was one of the reasons. Yeah.
What should be the considerations in terms of a deal, a hostage deal, to free the hostages being held by Hamas in terms of releasing terrorists? So what obligation does the country have to get out the hostages at all costs, even if it means, releasing terrorists that could potentially harm us?
Many years ago, before all of you were born, when you would travel by plane, you didn't have to have photo ID. They didn't check your luggage. I remember we went to Eretz Yisrael a few times in the summertime with our children, Amatzoi Shabbos. And they would say, quickly, the plane is going to take off in 5 minutes. Run quickly. So we run. They wouldn't check. There was no need for photo ID. A lot of times I would speak out of town at a Shabbaton, and the balabas who sponsored the whole Shabbaton wanted to get a frequent flyer mileage. So he would put his name, Goldstein or Goldberg, whatever, on the ticket. I would come and say, my name is Mr. Goldberg, and they would let me on the plane. They didn't require any photo ID. They didn't check your luggage. No one was bombing anything. The whole world is crazy now because of these miserable Palestinian terrorists. They hijacked a couple of planes, and then they bombed the plane over Lockerbie, England, and then a lot of people got killed on that occasion. So now the whole world is crazy now. So many years ago, the Arabs hijacked 2 or 3 planes full of Americans who were going back to Eretz Yisrael in the summer, going back to America. and then they landed the planes in Jordan, I think. And one of the people who was on the plane was Rabbi Hutner. Rabbi Hutner was the head of the Yeshiva in New York. So he has several students who are extremely successful in business, who support the yeshiva in a very big way. They're very wealthy people, so they approached the State Department that they're prepared to pay a fortune of money. The State Department should try to negotiate with the terrorists to release Rabbi Hutner. So the State Department, after a week, they gave back the answer. The American policy always was you never negotiate with terrorists because they ain't no double stuff. It's not a smart idea, but they didn't realize that. There's nothing to discuss. So they didn't tell them right away. They told them at the end of the week. So in the course of the week, they spoke to Rabbi. They wanted to know what's the din. Are you permitted to do Pidyon Shvuyim? There's a Mishnah in Gittin. You're not allowed to pay money for Pidyon Shvuyim more than the person would sell for if they would sell them on the slave market. There still is a slave market in certain parts of the world. So it says if the outstanding Talmid Chacham, so he's worth a lot of money. So the Rabbanim had to discuss, is it permissible? So it was reported. And I was told that it was an accurate report that Rabbi Yankin Kamenetsky and Rabbi Shafashin all attended this meeting of that Lotus Rabbanim. Rabbi Kamenetsky said, in his opinion, there is no mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuyim in the middle of a war if it's going to be detrimental to the war effort. You're going to pay $1 million to release Rabbi Hutner. You're going to use the $1 million to do more terrorist activities. You're just going to encourage more terrorist activities. Sitting over here, you're going to release terrorists in order to get the hostages free. The terrorists are going to go kill more Jews. So sometimes there's a cheshbon. That's the cheshbon here in Eretz Yisrael. That if the soldiers know that they're going to redeem them at all costs, and even if they're killed, they're going to be meiser nefesh to get the body back, to get at the Jewish burial site. So the soldiers will be more devoted to fighting. They'll be meiser nefesh to fighting better. That's not always the case. A lot of times, a lot of soldiers gave their lives in a war, and they took these terrorists and they put them in prison. Now you're going to release all the terrorists. So what did they give their lives for before? What were they meiser nefesh for? If you're going to release all the terrorists, they're going to kill more Jews. So my impression is that that attitude is not helping now. The attitude that they're going to release, the government will do whatever is in their power, even extreme things, in order to release all the hostages, is not getting. I don't think it's getting the soldiers to fight with more mesiras nefesh. They're fighting with more mesiras nefesh not because of the atrocities that these people did. People who lived through the Nazi atrocities said that it doesn't compare. The Nazis never burned people alive. They killed them with poison gas, and then they cremated the body, but they didn't burn people alive. And over here, they tied up people with metal cords in order that the metal cords shouldn't burn. So they burnt them alive. They burnt them alive. The Nazis never did that. They cut off people's parts of their body. They raped women. The Nazis never did such atrocities. Worse than the Nazis. I don't think that policy that the Israeli government had for so many years, that they'll go out all the way in order to redeem hostages, alive or dead, whatever, I don't think it's working out now. It's detrimental to the Medina. You're putting more people's lives in sakana. I think Rabbi Kamenetsky was right. Rabbi Kamenetsky said there was no war. Israel was not at war. He said in 1948 there was a Mechamet HaShichrut, there was a war, because the Arabs weren't happy about the deprivation of the Medina. So this was many years later when they hijacked the planes. And the only country that had signed a peace agreement by then was Egypt. None of the other countries signed the peace agreement. So Rabbi Kamenetsky, officially, they're all still at war with Medina Yisrael. And this was in the summertime, so they're trying to ruin tourism. So he says, that's part of the war. That's a hemshech of the Mechamet HaShichrut. Part of the war is to ruin the economy, and to ruin the tourism is to ruin the economy. So he said, he considered a middle of the war, a hemshech of the Mechamet HaShichrut. He said, middle of the war, there's no mitzvah to do Pidyon Shvuyim. It was going to increase terrorist activities. It's going to be detrimental to the war. I think he was right. I think the Ashkenazi rabbis only read it. I think the Sephardic rabbis, Chacham Havaya, wrote a tshuva years ago about exchanging prisoners. So the Sephardic rabbis all follow HaRav. I don't think he's right in this case at all. I think the Ashkenazi rabbis follow Rabbi Kamenetsky. I think they're all correct over here.
And what should the focus be in one's learning during his time in yeshiva, in specific, the relationship between learning Gemara or other areas of Torah in terms of dividing one's time, spending one's time?
The Gemara Makkas has an additional level of interpretation on the pasuk in Tehillim, Shir Amalas. You have the 15 Shir Amalas next to each other. So one of them speaks about Aliyah L'Regel, Shir Amalas, Amdasai Raglein B'Sharafi Yerushalayim. So the Gemara has an additional level of interpretation. That pasuk, Amdasai Raglein B'Milchama, the Jewish soldiers are successful in battle in the schools of Shari Yerushalayim because there are yeshivas all over where they're learning Torah. Lev HaTorah is the schus that the soldier should be successful at. Why so? What's the connection? So the Nitziv, who is the Yeshiva of Balozhin, Balozhin was the Yeshiva that lasted time that Bar Chaim Balozhin and the Talmud of the Vilna Gaon. The Yeshiva lasted only for 90 years. It was closed down by the Russian government. Made it so unreasonable that they had to lock the doors at night and no one should learn too long. So the Rabban said that's not Yeshiva, so they closed it down. So the Nitziv was the Rosh in the last 39 years of Balozhin. So he wrote a long introduction to Torah Shabbat Peh. He published his commentary on the Shiltas as a long introduction to Torah Shabbat Peh. The one chunk of the introduction about Inyanim Milchama. So he quotes a Mishnah Pirkei Avos that there are specific punishments that correspond to specific averos. So the Mishnah says, Cherev Bala Olam Milchama is because the Jewish people are not learning properly, because Bittul Torah and Ilus Adin and Kilkal Adin, because they're misinterpreting and paskening wrong on shilas that come up. So the Nitziv quotes many sources to that effect. Because Bittul Torah and Ilus Adin is the cause for Cherev from Milchama. So that's why the Hazal said, he quotes a lot of Mamaternas, that when you learn Torah, and the people will learn Torah, that will be a Zgula for Hatzlach and the Milchama, because the whole Milchama is because of Bittul Torah. He quotes also the Gemara, the Babli has this, that during the lifetime of Chizuk HaMelech, he lived towards the end of the Vice Rishon period, so he required, Chizuk HaMelech required a whole campaign, everybody has to sit and learn, and no one can go to work and make money. Why not? You have no right to force a person to sit and learn all day and all night. They want to learn. It's a din, you have to learn 5 minutes every day, 5 minutes every night. You're not going to become a Tam Chacham if all you're going to do is learn 5 minutes every day, 5 minutes every night. But that's all you're not mechuyev to learn Hasmad and Ruben. Some unusual people learn all day and all night, but most people don't. So what right did Chizuk HaMelech have to insist? So the Nitziv says because it was for the war effort. For the war effort, you can make people do all kinds of crazy things. So he insisted. The Gemara says, "But can be done by Be'er-Shem," and they checked all over in all the elementary schools. All the little children knew all the laws of Tumah B'Tara, inside out, Bal Peh. Everybody knew the laws. So he says Chizuk HaMelech felt it was necessary for the war effort. You always learn in the yeshiva, but if there's a Milchama in Eretz Yisrael, then the soldiers need as many schus as they can get. And the whole Milchama is, the cause of all the Milchamas is because of Bittul Torah. So the Jewish people will learn extra. You have to learn a little extra when you have a break for lunch or for supper or whatever. You don't have to spend the whole hour for the lunch. You should spend a couple of minutes learning something extra. You have to daven extra. You can't just, it's not sufficient to daven Nishma Nesra. If everybody's basically healthy and everybody basically makes a parnas and everything is going well, so you daven and you should continue like that. When you have tzaras hatzibur and klal yisrael b'sakana, the Jewish people who live in Eretz Yisrael are considered al pi din tzibur, klal yisrael. All the Jews who live in chutz la'aretz are considered kiyichidim. They're not part of the tzibur. Chayv the mitzvahs because we all have kedushas Yisrael. We say in the nusach habracha shekedushanim b'mitzvah yisrael b'tzivan. Everybody has kedushas Yisrael, even if you live in chutz la'aretz. That's what's Mechayv HaMitzvah. But the tzira of Klal Yisrael, who's part of the Klal Yisrael, that's something Gemara has din. Why does you din? That's only all the Jews who live in Eretz Yisrael. The Chumash has a din, Kisav v'Machama v'Artzachan. Al Atzar Eschar, it is Machama and Eretz Yisrael by definition means. Klal Yisrael is B'Sakon. Even though millions of people all over the world, Jewish people are not B'Sakon. But if you have 10 Jews living in Eretz Yisrael, millions of Jews living in Chutz La'aretz, the 10 Jews in Eretz Yisrael, That's the definition of Klal Yisrael, the Jews who live in Eretz Yisrael. So whenever there's a Tzoras HaTzibur, so there is V'Hariyosem V'Chatzotzros. You have to blow Chatzotzros in conjunction with the davening. Like on Rosh Hashanah, we blow shofar in the middle of the Chazaras HaShatz of Musaf. You shake a lulav in the middle of Halav. If you shake a lulav in the middle of Shemona Esrei, that'll be a hefsek, even if you don't say anything. Just doing some other mitzvah in the middle of a different mitzvah is a hefsek. And if you blow shofar in the middle of Halav, that'll be a hefsek. But to blow shofar in the middle of Shemona Esrei blends in with the Shemona Esrei. To shake a lulav in the middle of Halav, that blends in with the Halav. The farmer offices praised HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He had a bountiful year, a successful year on the farm. And he dances with the lulav and the esrog, the things that go on his farm. We're dancing out of joy. So the tilas lulav blends in with the halal, and the kiyah shofar blends in with the shemona esrog. And the chatzah, whenever they had a time of sibur, they would blow chatzotzos in the middle of the chazaras hashatz. Shemona esrog used to have 18 brachas. On the time of sibur, used to add an additional 6 brachas. The Gemara has a source of Tanakh that there's such a thing as a prayer with 24 units. The Gemara said, yeah. And the time is Sibur, the Chazan and Chazaras HaShatz adds another 6 brachas. At the end of each one of the additional brachas, just like we do on Rosh Hashanah. At the end of Malchus Ren Shofar, we blow shofar. So in the middle of Chazaras HaShatz and the time is Sibur, at the conclusion of the 6 additional brachas, they would blow Chatzotzos. That's a pasuk in Chumash. What is that all about? It says, Hariyosem V'Chatzotzos, Trua. What's Trua? The Gemara says Trua, the Talmud says it's Yabava, to cry. That's based on the Gemara in Bava B'Tzir, in the Perek Hazov. The Gemara says, for the day the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Beis HaMikdash, Ninalu Shari Tefillah. The prayers are not accepted to the same extent that used to be accepted. As much of Beis HaMikdash Sharikan, because the Beis HaMikdash was the Malkum Tefillah. Ki Beis Tefillah Yikarei. Shlomo HaMelech, when he completed the building of the first Beis HaMikdash, offered a long Tefillah. It's recorded twice in Tanakh. It's recorded Sefer Malachim and Sefer Dirach Yomim. Slight discrepancies between the two. So, if I would have been Shlomo HaMelech, I think I would have said, I built you a Beis HaMikdash, we're going to bring karbonos. He doesn't say one word about karbonos. He said, I built a Beis HaMikdash, everyone should come and daven. To him, the main purpose of the Beis HaMikdash, we have an extra head with everybody, Shalom is there. And when we're aggravated about something, someone needs a shidduch, someone needs a parnasa, someone needs a refuah. So he goes to the next neighbor to the Rosh, and he pours his heart out. The main purpose of the Beis HaMikdash in the eyes of Shlomo HaMelech is to daven. So that's what the Gemara quotes the pasuk from Echad Tam Kiesek Vashaveh. So some Tfilosi, if I daven after the whole Beis HaMikdash, the Beis HaMikdash is the office where all the prayers are accepted. And if you can't go to daven Beis HaMikdash, you have to daven facing the Beis HaMikdash. Nochach HaMikdash. And the Rambam writes that's a din deraisa. Not only for Shlomo HaMelech, he can say it's only a din derabbanan. The Rambam has a makar that it's a din and a third. The Rambam at the beginning of Hilchos Tefillah says what used to be the din deraisa of Tefillah, and then Anshe Knesset Agdala beefed it up and they added more. He has Nochach HaMikdash, the face of Beis HaMikdash. That's part of the din of deraisa. You have to face the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara says, V'yam Shachar Beis HaMikdash, the prayers are not accepted to the same extent as they used to be B'zman HaMikdash. However, even though Shari Tefillah Nina, though Shari Demo is not Nina, but the person davens sincerely and is moved to tears over a serious issue. That's not he lost a nickel and he's crying all day long, he lost a nickel. Something, there's a Muhammad, a person, and wonderful tzaddikim are killed in the Muhammad. That's a tragedy, and people are moved to tears when they daven. The Shari Demo is not Nina. So the whole idea of Trua, you blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, you have to blow Trua, Tkiyah. Trua has to sound like crying. And there are 3 opinions in the Tanoim, which part of crying, so we do all the 3. They made a takana, Rabbi Bo, lived in Kisra, they made a takana. We blow Tkiyah Shvarim Tkiyah, Tkiyah Trua Tkiyah, Tkiyah Shvarim Trua Tkiyah. The 3 kinds of crying. So the same thing on the time of Sibur. For many centuries, they never blew chatzotzos on the time of Sibur. The Mishnah says every time of Sibur, you're supposed to blow chatzotzos. That's the pasuk. The Rama quotes, Mitzvah says, the first line of the Rama, so for many centuries, they didn't blow chatzotzos on the time of Sibur. So Moshe Feinstein is a true, how come not? So he says, we all follow, we all rely on the Maggid Mishnah. The Mishnah says that mitzvah of Kiyas Chatzotzos to elevate the level of the davening to the level of tefillah she'eshim b'moaz, and should have crying with it. So we blow chatzetzes at the conclusion of the special tefillahs, special brachas in the Shemona Esrei. The Maggid Mishnah writes on the side of the Rambam, that's only if you have chatzetzes from the Beis HaMedrash. If you don't have chatzetzes from the Beis HaMedrash, you don't have the mitzvah. Mishnah Berurah doesn't say that. Mishnah Berurah says we don't have a Medina, we don't have a Jewish government. And I said, now we have a Jewish government in Eretz Yisrael. So now in the army they have a lot, in quite a few shuls, and it costs a lot of money. They blow chatzetzes after Shachris and after Nik. They blow chatzetzes, they blow Tkiyah, Shurah, Tkiyah, Shurah, Tkiyah, Shurah, Tkiyah. So this Torah, to elevate the level of the tefillah should be Zechus. The Rambam writes, mitzvah says, Lizik alo hariyah. Called Sarah Shetava Alatzika. Lizik means something more than tefillah. That's why many yeshivas and many shuls, they say, Avinu Malkeinu now. The Chassam Sofer lived through a war when he lived in Pressburg. Chassam Sofer was born and brought up in Frankfurt, in Germany. He was a Yekek. He signed all of his Jewish Moshe HaKot in Frankfurt. But later on, the end of his life, he was a rabbi in Hungary, in Pressburg. So he writes in his diary was pit. He writes in his diary, there was a Muhammad that was going on. I think Austro-Prussian war was going on. And he says all the Jews had to leave the city, Pressburg. And he says during the whole Muhammad, they said, Avinu Malkeinu every day. They said, Alon B'Hurachim every day. You have to have Za'aka, you have to have something special. So that's part of the Za'aka. You have to blow Trua. You have to blow Trua, Tkiyah, in connection with the tefillah to elevate the level of the tefillah. It should be a special tefillah, special program with the Eilah. The learning should be, we should learn a little extra, and the learning should be as Zechus for the soldiers, because all the Muhammads are because of Bittul Torah. So to learn, we'll try to rectify that. And then the tefillahs have to be, what tefillah? You can't just rely on what you don't know. In many shuls they add on the Pirkei Tehillim, or you add on Avinu Malkeinu. You have to add something special. Special Tehillim. Unfortunately, we're not happy about Muhammad. We've got no choice. It was forced upon us. We're not happy. The Chassam Sofer writes, a suggestion was made during the First World War also. A suggestion was made that the Rabbanim should be grace and tightness that the war should end. So Chassam Sofer says no. The Gemara has a statement, Muhammad are Chalta de Gula. He said if you're going to pray to the Rosh, you're going to fast and pray that the war should end, you're slowing down the Gula. He understood that every war in the world is Chalta de Gula. That's very surprising. The Minchas Aluzah, the Minkasher Rebbe, during the First World War, writes in his Chuvas, there was such a suggestion there should be grace and tightness that the war should end. So he quotes, you're not allowed to, because the Chassam Sofer, Munkash is in Hungary. So he said the Chassam Sofer wrote in his Chuvah, in his diary, that all wars in the world are Aschalta B'Gula. So he says, we're not allowed to pray that the First World War should end, because you're going to slow down the Gula. You don't want to slow down the Gula. So very surprising idea. Rashi on that Gemara says, well, what do you mean the wars in Eretz Yisrael? Who's going to be the Balabas? Who's going to control the government in Eretz Yisrael? If the Jews win the war and they establish the Jewish government, that's Aschalta de Be'ula. The Gemara says that there are 3 mitzvahs that have to be fulfilled in a specific order. So the first mitzvah is to establish the Jewish government over all of Eretz Yisrael. Every government has to have a standing army to protect the citizens. And the second mitzvah is that army should wipe out Amalek. And then the third mitzvah is Livnus Lev Beis HaBchira. That's Geula. To have Hashras Hashchira, to have a Beis HaMikdash. That is the definition of Geula. 1948, when they established the Din Yisrael, the Chazon Ish already lived in Eretz Yisrael, way before the war. He had a dream that he should move to Eretz Yisrael, so he followed his dreams. I never have any dreams. But people have big dreams, and they follow their dreams. So the Chazon Ish lived in Eretz Yisrael way before 1948. So when they established Medina, he blurted out, he made a statement, this is the end of the Golus, but we still don't have the Geula. So people thought that it was double talk. It's not double talk. This is the end of the Golus. The Jewish government invites all the Jews from all over the world to move to Eretz Yisrael. But it's not yet Geula. The Geula means being Beis HaMikdash. The Ramban writes it. In his introduction to his commentary, Achon Shmos, says the Sefer Shmos is about the first Golus that the Jewish people suffered, and the Gula therefrom. The whole story is coming to the Gula therefrom. Then he asks himself, how can I say the Gula? The Gula is not till we return back to Eretz Yisrael. That's after the death of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's after the whole Chamisha Chomshei Dara. That's not by the end of Shmos. That's in Sefer Yeshua, when the Jews crossed over the Jordan, they returned back to Eretz Yisrael. Ramban says that the main tragedy, when Yaakov Avinu had to leave Eretz Yisrael, the main tragedy, it was a tragedy that they had to leave Eretz Yisrael. We should really all live in Eretz Yisrael. But the main tragedy was that they no longer had Hashras HaShechina. He paraphrases an expression in the pasuk in Sefer Yov, Soda Laka Aleya Aleha. They were lacking Hashras HaShechina. When you get to the end of Shmos, you have 4 sedras, Truma Tutzav Vayakol Tikud, all about Binyan HaMishkan. That's Geula. That's the definition of Geula. So Melchama is our Shelit'a to the Geula. This Melchama, Melchama HaShechrur, then the Jews established a government. That's our Shelit'a to the Geula. The Geula, that's going to lead up to Binyan Beis HaMikdash. Rav Kook used to speak about the Balfour Declaration as Reshit Smichas Geula saying, Lord Balfour, at the time of the First World War, declared in the name of the British government that they're going to give Palestine to the Jewish people. They never kept their promise. They didn't do it. So the Jews had to pressure them. And they had to bomb hotels and bomb bridges, and there was a lot of bloodshed before Hakam Samdini, because the British didn't live up to their promise. I remember Rav Soloveitchik used to speak years ago. He used to speak all the time for the Mizrahi. So he would say, we do not owe a debt of gratitude to the British for giving us Eretz Yisrael. It never belonged to the British in the first place. It was given to HaRav Avinu. The Jews never lost the ownership of the Eretz Yisrael throughout all the years. Never belonged to any other nation. Always belonged to the Jews. We don't owe a debt of gratitude to the British. It always belonged to the Jewish people. So that's Haschal to the good. If you have a Melchemet HaShechrur and they establish a Jewish government and the government wipes out these Amalekim, because Amalek is a nation who adopts a policy, they're going to kill out the Jewish people, men, women, and children. That's what these terrorists said. The first terrorists that they caught, the first day of the war, Isru Chag HaSukkos, so they caught a whole bunch of the terrorists. So they said, we plan to come back again and again and again and again till we wipe out every single Jewish person, men, women, and child, till we wipe off Israel from the map. That's Amalek. Amalek means they adopted the policy to wipe out the Jewish people. So that's Mechidas Amalek. So that's called Geula. That's Haschal to the Geula. We hope, we pray that this Muhammad should be the last of all the Muhammads. We should be Zechus to see total peace in Eretz Yisrael. And we should be able to build a Beis HaMikdash very soon. Yeah.
Can Rabbi expand on the issue of investing time while in yeshiva in Gemara and other facets of Torah? Priorities.
What mean priorities? You have to learn in education. You always go on an akal avakabit. First you have to learn the easy things, then you go to the modern. You can't jump into Gemara without knowing Chumash. You got to be Ma'aseh every week. It's a must. You have to be Ma'aseh every week. You should be Ma'aseh a couple of years in a row with Rashi, till you know all the Rashis. Rashi on Chumash introduces us all to the world of Torah Shabbat Peh. Unbelievable. Rashi did a fantastic job. He introduced you to the whole world of Torah Shabbat Peh. And then you have to learn the rest of Tanakh. Believe it or not, studying the Rim Ksubim is also part of Talmud Torah. The Orthodox Jews in Europe for many years, many generations, ran away from Tanakh. It was in the early years after Hakam Samedina, so there was a joint Yom HaAtzmaut observance. The Mizrahi and the Aguda joined together in Cleveland to have a joint celebration of Yom HaAtzmaut. And the invitations were signed by Mrs. Gifter, Rabbi Gifter's wife. She's still alive, she's over 100, she's all there. Not so strong, but her mind is functioning. And Rabbi Meir Bloch. Rabbi Meir Bloch was the one who founded Telz Yeshiva after the war in Cleveland. So I live in Washington Heights, where all the Yekis lives. And one of the Balabatim from Breuer sent a letter to Rabbi Meir Bloch. How can you celebrate Yom HaAtzmaut? We don't believe in the Medina. So he sent back a response that became famous. It was printed in Hebrew and English. They translated it. He said, what do you mean we don't believe in the Medina? Zionism is part of our religion. And he writes a whole arichas. There were 3 mitzvahs that the Orthodox Jews ran away from. One is Zionism, one is Medaber B'Lashon HaKodesh, and one is to study Tanakh, to study the Rim Ksubim. To learn the Rim Ksubim is part of Talmud Torah. The Orthodox Jews ran away from it because the Apikursim Apikurim are giving their own interpretations of the Veimaksu, not according to the traditions of the Torah Shabbat Peh. So the Jews boycotted studying the Veimaksu. They ran away from Zionists because the secular Zionists wanted to establish the Medina. I'm not psychoanalyzing them. This is what they said themselves. They want to found the Medina that will replace the Torah. They won't have the mitzvah to be able to be Jewish because you're an Israeli. That'll be good enough. You won't have to observe any mitzvahs. And they ran away from speaking Hebrew. The Rambam, Rabbi Meir Bloch quotes in his letter. The Rambam writes in his commentary on Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah says, "Havizar b'mitzvah kalach avachamur she'ein ata yedei matan schara shel mitzvah." So the Rambam says, "What's an example of a mitzvah kalach?" So he says, "Daber b'lashon hakodesh," to speak Hebrew. That's one of the forgotten mitzvahs. So, in the early 1900s, there were Jewish writers who were not Ma'aminim, and they developed the Hebrew language, and they used to have presentations. They would write an essay, HaRav. HaRav was an atheist. So HaRav, he was very learned, but then he gave up all of his emunah. So HaRav used to write essays. A lot of his essays were plagiarized. They found out later on. Because he knew different languages. He used to take sociological essays that were written in German and in French and just translated them into Hebrew. There's one chapter when they write about him that he was a plagiarist. So the ones who attacked him didn't know anything about the Mesilas Yesharim. There's a whole chapter about preachers, lock, stock, and barrel. He just lifted the whole chapter from the Mesilas Yesharim. But the people that he delivered his paper to, they never looked at the Mesilas Yesharim, so they didn't realize that it was plagiarized. But the conservative rabbi wrote this whole book about all the plagiarism of HaRav. HaRav was a very famous writer, and he plagiarized. He took essays written by sociologists in German and in French. He just translated into Hebrew, presented it as if it was his original paper. So they used to deliver papers. Mendel Sfarim wrote in Yiddish, others wrote in Hebrew. A whole group used to deliver papers in Hebrew, and they were developing the Hebrew language further. And that's why the religious Jews ran away from all three, from Zionism and from speaking Hebrew and from studying the Veimaksu. So that's Rabbi Meir Bloch writes in his letter to this Balabas from Rosh community from Washington. He says it's about time that the Orthodox Jews should take back the three parts that they threw away. We should start learning Tanakh according to the traditions of the Torah Shabbat Peh. We should start speaking Hebrew and writing Hebrew, and we should take back the mitzvah of Zionism. We should observe Zionism according to the tradition, not according to the way the Apikurim do. So we have to have time for Lev HaTorah. All Lev HaTorah is important, but especially in the Milchama. You have to have time for learning everything. You have to learn. Learning always has to be menakal v'kovet. You can't jump into the most complicated topic without being prepared. You have to. Rabbi Soloveitchik, he was one of the biggest Magid Yeshia of many centuries. So his style would always be like this. He used to say, whenever the Gemara, every page in the Gemara has a machlokes. Whenever there's a machlokes, you'll see from the Gemara there are 100 points that they agree upon. They disagree at one point. So let's first discuss the 100 things that they agree upon. And after we have a picture of what they agree, then we'll be able to understand what they disagree. It always worked. They would always give a background. He would say, what is the pasuk in Chumash? How does the Pshuto Shel Mikra go? And what's the additional level of interpretation that the Torah Shabbat Peh has? When does it apply? When it doesn't apply? What does Rabbi say? What does Rabbi Yehuda say? And then there's one little point where they have a machlokes. But if you know the background, you always get background. If you know what the background is, then you'll understand better what the Nekudas HaMachlokes is. So that you can't philosophize. You can't take a machlokes in the Gemara and give a whole philosophy. You have to know what's the background. You have to know the whole Masechta. So in some yeshivas, they spend the whole year learning the first 5 blot in the Masechta, and they think that they know the whole Masechta. You have to know what says in Daf Yud and Daf Chav and Daf Lam, and you have to know the whole Masechta. You can't make a chakira before you know all the rest of the Gemara. You have to know what are the given facts. After you know what the given facts are, then you have to develop a derech. A derech means you have a jungle with 1,001 dinim. You have to figure out a derech, which dinim belong on, which dinim are connected, which dinim are not connected. A lot of times the Baal Hamor has many hasogas on the Rif. So at the end of all of his hasogas, he wrote a shtick. They called the Sefer Hatzofa. We don't have it printed in the end of Chullin, but we have it printed in the Tmin Bein. The Ravid, the famous Ravid, the Ravid and the Balamah used to learn Chavrusa with each other. So each one, they were from Provence, from southern France. So each one wrote Hastokas on the other one Sefer. So the Balamah has this shtick. The Yud Gilumid Shatar Nidreshes Behem in Gemara. There are 13 klolim you have to keep in mind when you learn Gemara. So one of the klolim he has is, a lot of times the Gemara has the exact same terminology in two different contexts. The exact same word, but it means two different things. A lot of times you have totally different language, but it's exactly the same thing. So you shouldn't be fooled by the fact that the terminology is exactly the same, the terminology is totally different. That's what the derech is all about. Which dinim belong on this side of the path, which dinim belong on the other side, which dinim are connected, which dinim are not connected. A lot of times you have to disregard the expressions, the terminologies in the Gemara. As we're learning is all about, you always have to know the background of the dinim to understand the dinim. Yeah?
Can Rabbi discuss his opinion regarding tchelas in terms of wearing tchelas, number of strings, and method of time?
The Beis HaLevi was the father of Chaim Soloveitchik. He was also Yeshiva University for a period of time as a rabbi in Brisk. So the Beis HaLevi has in his Sefer, in his Chuvas, he develops the whole thing. If you wear a talus and you only have tzitzis in three corners, that's not a violation of Bal Tigra. You're not yet in the mitzvah. You just violated the mitzvah. Let's say you have a pair of tefillin, you don't have dalet parshas, you only have 3 parshas. That's not Bal Tigra. You just never did the mitzvah, never got it off the ground. Bal Tigra, the Mishnah gives an example of Bal Tigra. If you have a korban, you're supposed to do achat, you're supposed to do 4 zrikas on all 4 corners. Or another korban, you do shtaim she'ein arba, you do zrika in the 2 corners opposite each other. So instead of doing 4 zrikas, you do 1. Instead of doing 2, you do 1. So you write it that you have it, the korban is kosher that you have it, but you have the ability to do it b'shlei muso. So he said the same by tchelis. The Mishnah said, if you don't put it in tchelis, you're yotze the mitzvah in an incomplete form. So if you have tchelis available, you don't bother to use it, it's worse than not wearing a talus at all. If you don't wear a talus at all, you're not mechuyev in the mitzvah and tzitzis. You're not mechuyev to wear a beged with 4 corners in order to wear tzitzis. That's a midas chasidus that the Jewish people have adopted. But in Torah, wear tzitzis all day long. That's based on the Gemara. The Gemara says, in the end of the first parak in Shlit'a, the Gemara says, why did Moshe Rabbeinu desire so much to move to Eretz Yisrael? He wanted to go swimming in the Kinneret. He wanted to drink, he wanted to eat the Peres Genoisa, he wanted to eat the delicious fruits there. Gemara says, no. He wanted to be able to fulfill the mitzvahs of Yisrael. What do we want to fulfill? If you don't live in Eretz Yisrael, he wanted to put himself in a situation though of being mechuyev. That's a midas chasidus. He wanted to live in Eretz Yisrael to be mechuyev, to do more mitzvahs and to fulfill the mitzvahs. So that's when the Bali Ataisis developed this attitude. You should always go out of your way to buy a 4-corner garment, even though it's not in style. They don't sell them in the stores. They only sell them in Judaic stores. Nobody wears 4-corner garments today, but in Ochrim, the Arabs still wear sheiks like that. So Taisus says you should do like Moshe Rabbeinu. Other Bali Taisus say, what are you talking about? When you'll be on a madrega like Moshe Rabbeinu, then it makes sense. You're not on a madrega like Moshe Rabbeinu. It's Merci ki you HaRav. There were communities in Morocco where only the rabbi would wear a talus. The Balabatim weren't allowed to wear a talus. It was Merci ki you HaRav. Who do you think you are? You're not as great as Moshe Rabbeinu. The meaning by us is that we do like the other Bali Taisus, that you wear tzitzis all day long, go out of your way, and God will get it to fulfill the mitzvah. So the Beis HaLevi says, if you don't have a 4-corner garment at all, strictly speaking, you're not mechuyev to wear tzitzis. If you have a 4-corner garment and you have tchelis available and you don't use it, then you're violating an avera, Bal Tigra, because you're yotze the mitzvah, shalom b'shlei muso. If there was an opinion in the days of the Tanaim that has not been accepted. And Chelis is ma'akev es halav. There's no partial credit. If you don't have Chelis and love, and you're not yotze the mitzvah. We don't pass like that. We pass when you're yotze the mitzvah, shalom b'shlei muso, even if you don't have Chelis. So the Beis HaLevi said that's an example of Bal Tigra. If you have an Arba conference and you have Chelis available, you don't put it on, you're violating Bal Tigra. He says if you wouldn't wear the Arba conference at all, you wouldn't be violating anything. So how come for so many generations people were Tavesim only with Lava? So he says, we're all walking around with Esid Dechel. We want to fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzis, like Moshe Rabbeinu was considered to live in Eretz Yisrael to be able to be Mechuyev among mitzvahs. So we wear a four-corner garment, and we don't have tchelis. Somebody said we didn't know what the tchelis was. We don't have it. So he says that's Esid Dechel. But it's only Esid Dechel when it's Tiaf Shel L'Kaim Shneim. You have to have tchelis available. It costs a bit of money. It's a little bit expensive. You have tchelis available and you don't use it, then you don't say Esid Dechel. It's Tiaf Shel L'Kaim Shneim. Buy the tchelis and put it in the bag. So the Beis Halevi says it's better not to wear a four-corner garment than to wear a four-corner garment, not put it in tchelis. If you have a suffix, we're not so positive about the tchelis that they have now. The Radzina Rebbe, the late 1800s, he came up with a chiddush. He went specially. He was a genius. Radzina Rebbe was very learned. He put it together. The Talmud Bavli on Seder Taras. He took all the Gemaras and Shas. He put them in order of the Mishnayot. All the Gemaras have to do with Mishnayos and Taras. So he put them in the order. He made a fake Gemara, but he took all the Gemaras. Then he has his commentary on the side. Very learned. And a lot of big chidushim. Very learned person. So he was a super genius. And he especially went to Italy. He heard that there's an aquarium there where they have all the sea animals. He wanted to figure out which is the chavazim. He was interested. He thought we have to show the Rabbi Shalom that we're interested in the Beis HaMikdash. We're not going to demonstrate it, so why should he go out of his way to help us make a Beis HaMikdash? So he said, the big Vikuna, some of the big Vikuna have to have tchelis. The pashtus perhaps is, not everybody with pashtus is, they're just like the tchelis with the tzitzis. Has to be from chilazon, so too perhaps the tchelis for the big Vikuna also has to be from the chilazon. Not everybody agrees to that. So he wanted to show the Rabbi Shalom that we want some help in this area. So he went to the aquarium in Italy, and he decided which sea animal corresponds to the chilazon. And then by the time the Nazis started the war, there were tens of thousands of Hasidim in Europe. The Snagim never picked up on it, but the Hasidim, all Father Radzina Rebbe was a Chassidish Rebbe, the big Talmud. So there were tens of thousands of Hasidim who were wearing Radzina Tchelis at that time. So that turned out to be an error. That the whole Radzina Tchelis was a mistake. Could be that the Tchelis that used now is also a mistake. But we usually have it in Sofik, but I said, if you have a Sofik, you have something that may or may not be Tchelis. And it looks like it is Tchelis. It's at least a Sofik. Some right, it's not even a Sofik. They're so positive, it's not so little ridiculous. It's not even a Sofik. It's a Sofik Hanoita Levada that it is Tchelis. So the Pashtus says that you shouldn't wear, it's better not to wear a four-corner. That's what the Beis Halevi says. It's better not to wear a four-corner garment than to wear and not put on the tchelis. How many strings should you have tchelis and how many lova? So that's a machlokes Beisham himself. How many strings they have in tzitzis in general? So that's one of the 6 cases where we don't pass them like Beis Hillel. We pass them like Beisham. The Goyim, Taisus and Sukkah and Rav Gimel quotes from the Rebbe that from all the many disputes between Beisham and Beis Hillel, there were only 6 cases where we pass them like Beisham. So one of the 6 is how many strings do you put in? The silver of the opinion put in 3 long strings, you fold them over, you have 6 short strings. And we don't follow Beis Hillel, we follow Beisham here. You put in 4 long strings and you fold them over, it turns out to be 8. So how many of the 8 are supposed to be dyed chel? So that's a major dispute. So the Rambam's opinion is 1 of the 8. In other words, you dye a half a string chel. How do you dye a half a string chelis? You make strings and then you dip only half of the string into the dye. That's not acceptable because the dye is only going to affect the outside of the string. The inside is still going to remain white. So you have to take wool. You have to take the raw wool and soak the wool in the dye. And then when you make the strings, you have to switch in the middle. You have to make, that's a stunt. You have to make half of the string has to be with the dyed wool, half of the string with the white wool. According to the Rabbi. According to the Rabbi, you have 1 long string. Out of 4 long strings, 1 long string should be chelis. That means 2 out of 8 will be blue, and the other 6 will be white. And in Shulchan Aruch, they don't quote the Rambam or the Rabbi. Shulchan Aruch, they have been paskening for centuries, like Rashi and Taisus on the Gemara. Rashi and Taisus in the Menachos, Bergat Chelis say, you have to have 2 and 2, half chelis and half lava. So the Pashtus is Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah quotes from the Malbim. The Malbim wrote a sefer on Shulchan Aruch. He was known as a major person in the early years of his life, not a major person. At the end of his life, he switched to go into Tanakh. But the Mishnah Berurah quotes him all the time on the beginning of Shulchan Aruch. He wrote a sefer Atzis HaChaim that the Mishnah Berurah quotes all the time. So he quotes the Malbim, holds Malacha, that is 2 and 2, and he has other Rishonim say it like that. Many say it like that. It's 2 and 2. How do you wrap around? How do you wind around? How much tchelas do you wind around? How much love do you wind around? So that was different traditions from the days of the Gaonim. The days of the Gaonim, they still had tchelas. So some Gaonim write like this, write like that. So that's not Yaakov yet. How you wind around? How many strings you have tchelas on? That's crucial. There's no way to satisfy all the opinions. Either do the Rambam or the Rabbi or the Tosfos. So the only opinion is called the Shulchan Aruch is the Rashi and Tosfos that is 2 and 2, half and half. How you wrap it around? We don't have any tradition. We have from the days of the Gaonim different versions. Ashkenazim on the side, nobody has any tradition on this because we haven't been wearing tchelas for so many years. So I personally just did the easy way out. The easiest opinion is the Rambam. The others are more complicated than how to wrap it around. But that the Gemara said that's not miyakad. How you wind around? How much you wind around? That's not miyakad. The Gemara says that Chelus is done with a rakia. So when we look at the Chelus, the Rismas is Chartamus Chametz Hashem Asisa Masa. You see the rakia, and you see the color of the rakia and the tzitzis. That should remind us of the Kisei HaKoved. Was it Kisei HaKoved after the rakia? I'm not sure, but that's what the Gemara says. Kisei HaKoved is in the rakia. I don't know. So the Gemara says that there are 7 rikiyim. In English, there's an expression. The guy is so excited, he's in 7th heaven. That's based on the Gemara Chagiga. There are Shiva rikiyim, there are 7 heavens. When we have a Shabbat brachas, we say, Baruch Elokeinu she'asim chadu ma'ono ma'on is not the 7th heaven. Ma'on is the 5th heaven. The 7th heaven, there isn't so much simcha. The Gemara HaKadosh Baruch Hu cries every day. He cries over the tzaddik v'ral Rosh. He's not happy with the way things are developing in the world. We can't see that. That's in the 7th heaven. We restore him tivke nafshi. Rosh cries in the 7th heaven. So we say, Baruch Elokeinu she'asim chadu ma'ono. In the 5th heaven, it appears to us as if the Rosh is never crying. He's happy about everything. But the truth of that is not so happy. So the Gemara says that there are 7 heavens. You don't have 7 heavens. You have to have 6 avirim in between. You don't have any avirim in between, so it's one big heaven. So if you add 6 avirim with the 7 heavens, that's up to 13. So the Gemara says, how many times should you wrap around? So the Gemara says between 7 and 13. Because there are 7 rikiyim, and Chel is done with a rakiya, and there have to be 6 avirim in order to have 7 rikiyim. So it should be between 7 and 13. So for many generations, that's what we had. We had 7, 8, 11, 13. You had 4 units. Each unit had, the first unit had 7. And then the others were 11, 7, 8, 11, 13. So 13 was the biggest number, and 7 was the smallest number. So that's one opinion in Tosfos. The Gemara said between 7 and 13. How many times do you wrap it around in between one kesher and the other? The other pshat in Gemara is no. You wrap it around 3 times. 3 times is a unit. How many units should you have? For so many centuries, we had 4 units. We had 5 Ashkenaz. We had 5 double knots. Had a double knot in the beginning, Kesher Elia. Then you have a double knot after the first unit, and wrap it around after the second. So the Gemara meant to say you should have 7 units, and each unit should have 3 winds around. So the Baal HaTorah was one of the Baal HaTorah. He lived in Marseille, he lived in France. So he recommends we should satisfy the both opinions. So he said you should have 7 units, and each unit has 7 krichas. So he satisfied the both opinions. Both opinions of Tosfos, like the Rambam and the Rabbi. So you have 7, and he gives a Zechus Dover, reminiscent of this, the pasuk at the beginning of Parashat Bahar. The person should count 7 years and make Shemitah at the end of the 7th year. And after 7 Shemitahs, Sheva Pamim, Sheva Shomim, Sheva Pamim, the next year is going to be over. So he quotes that pasuk, you should have 7 Shemitahs, and every Shemitah should have 7 years in it. So that's what you do about the tzitzis. You should have 7 units, and each unit should have 7 krichas to satisfy the both things. And that's what I did. I followed that's quoted in the Shulchan Aruch. I didn't discover America. In Shulchan Aruch, they tell you if you have chelas. Then they have also they quote from the Baal HaTorah. He interprets the Gemara. Nobody else interprets the Gemara like that. He says it's a hidden mitzvah when you get to the last knot, when you finish wrapping everything around, tying it up. So he says you should separate the tchelis on one side and the lavan on the other side. That's a hidden mitzvah. So the Magen Avraham quotes it from the Beis Yosef, from the Balavita. So that's what I do. They tell you in Shulchan Aruch, in the big Shulchan, they tell you how to tie the tzitzis.
Okay, we just want to thank Rav Schachter again for coming. Thank you very much.
I always enjoy when I visit this yeshiva.
Now, as per usual, as mentioned, we are saying extra Tehillim today, extra Pirkei Tehillim after Mincha in addition to Tehillim.